I spent my entire career building up my relationships, right? Like I'm all authenticity in my sales approach. Like when I build multi-million dollar deals, it's because I build that trust with my client.
Mhm.
That's part of my personal brand as well, as Sydney Robertson, right? In the industry. So when I started to feel like that was misaligning with like I was trying to tell my clients to do something that I wasn't really feeling aligned to my core values. I'm like, it got the ick, right? Like it just didn't feel good anymore. And I'm like, what am I doing for myself? This is my time. Like, I'm not gonna wait till I'm 70 to start like saving money for a fund. Like, I want to start making a difference now. It was scary. Like, it was really scary because I've had that corporate comfort for so many years, right? And when that first like period happened where no check came in, it's like, ooh, okay, this is my own savings. This is me.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project, changing the way the game is played. This podcast helps purpose-driven leaders unlock their highest potential so that they can play their biggest impact game. Welcome back to the Leadership Launchpad Project, changing the way this game is being played. We are so fired up today on this podcast. We've been riffing off air, and I told the ladies, please stop talking. I have to hit record so we can capture all these golden nuggets for our people. So thank you for joining us again this week. I'm actually going to pass the puck over to my teammate, Shelley, so that she can introduce our fabulous guest. Shell?
All right. I am so excited. I've had the privilege and honor of knowing Sydney for quite a number of years now, but a little bit of background on Sydney Robertson. She is a veteran in the media industry. She's got over 20 years experience as a sales leader. Her journey, huge success within media giants like Twitter and X, AOL, Yahoo, Rogers Media. I think where Sydney and I both kind of grew up. She's got a deep passion for coaching and mentorship. And Sydney leaves a significant impact, leading her teams to achieve remarkable results. One of the things that I'm dying to dig in with Sydney is her new powerful turn in her career. She has co-founded and leads Ellement as CEO, channeling her experience and passion into mission-driven venture. Ellement empowers women to thrive, invest, and ultimately lead global change. So excited to dig in with this one, Sydney. And then another new adventure for Sydney is Bond to Bloom, which is an initiative where women connect and thrive together through a series of events and retreats. So let's get started, Sydney. Infamous words of Susan Hobson, I'm going to pass the puck over to you for a little introduction into yourself.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for that really good pump up there, Shelley. And yes, it's so great to see you again. It's been a minute since we connected, and so glad you reached out. And yes, it's been a very exciting time. I call it my time of liminal space, but also huge change. Yeah, I mean, about me. So yeah, as you mentioned, 20 plus years in leadership, tech and media overall, I think over 30. My last 10 years were at Twitter X, which were such a highlight of my career. Loved my time there. Was there through the shift of acquisition. So, in 2023, when Elon Musk took over, I ended up taking over as head of Canada for sales, which was, like we can dig into what that looks like, obviously, but I will say
Yes,
that
we can.
I learned a lot. I will say huge leapfrogs, like literally overnight. My amazing leader was laid off as part of it, and I got a call that evening from Elon's guy saying, congrats, you're leaving Canada, and Elon needs a new strategy for Canada tomorrow to present to him. So I had 24 hours to pull together a strategy for Canada. It was interesting. And so, I really, it was scary, but I leaned into it, and I think a lot of what I've taken away in this next iteration of me has really I learned a lot from those times. So I made the decision about 8 months ago to just chart on my own territory with Ellement. So really, I think where the inspiration for Ellement came from was partially due to Empower Her. So it's an initiative that my friend and co-founder of Ellement, Jennifer Fields, and I came up with a few years back. And we were both working in the corporate space still. I was leading X, she's still at Trade Desk. And we felt there was a desire for female leaders and those that want to learn from female leaders to connect in our space. So we created Empower Her with the support of the CMDC. So the CMDC, if you don't know it, is the Canadian Media Directors Council. Their amazing president, Shannon Lewis, who I actually went to university with, but is an amazing leader there. Jen and I approached her and said, listen, there's a need for women to connect and a need to be inspired and to band together. So we created Empower Her, fully not-for-profit. All proceeds go to the CMDC. And we just had our 5th event a few weeks ago called Own Your Health, Own Your Power. And then we have actually first one, we all one coming up in June with our friends at Google. But basically, through this experience, there was just a feeling of a movement, like a need for a movement. And really the structure of our Empower Her events are, we have a lot of the board members and coaches in partnership with CMDC. So a lot of the presidents of agencies or the whole coast in Canada, as well as some CMOs like, Laura Pierce at Google and Susan Irving over
Nice.
CPG space. And basically we create these collectives. We have a keynote speaker. One was actually on imposter syndrome, for example, and then we do breakout sessions with coaches. So these leaders, the CMOs, these presidents of agencies are actual coaches, and they lead these circles. And then in these circles will be anywhere from up and comers in the industry, 20 plus, upwards to people who are people leaders themselves. And it really has created a very collaborative community. And as we grow, we get more and more ideas of what to do. And the last one actually was, it was actually not even on people in the industry. It was actually on women owning their health and their power. So meaning like if you are in your 20s, upwards to perimenopause and menopause, like how you can control your health. And it sparked a whole other layer of conversation. So I think from this movement, Jen and I really felt the need to take it to the next level. So it's great having this opportunity in the tech and media space. But what if we created women in health and wellness as a whole, women in finance, women in medicine, women in STEM? So really, we've been leapfrogging off of that to create that, as well as looking at female founder angel funds. So this is something we're in the process of building, but finding ways in which women can get more investment for their startups. So less than 2% of women actually get funding, which is absolutely wild.
Abysmal.
Wow.
I was at this Fresh Founders event Tuesday night. I've lost track of days.
Yeah.
There was a senator there from the East Coast, and he was saying that even though women get the least amount of funding, the return on their businesses is like significantly higher than men. Just saying. So he was like, we need to invest more in women. The sad thing is, like, a lot of government organizations aren't really doing that effectively. So we as a community have to invest in each other.
Amen.
So learning
Sister
a
preach.
lot about that. Yes, learning a lot about that and what that will come. So you're going to see with Element a lot of different facets. So things like Empower Her, where you're going to see events that connect other communities of women, as well as we build up this angel fund, what that looks like. And you're going to see some interesting things in the app space soon. I don't want to give away too much because we're tinkering behind the scenes right now what that looks like. But again, connecting women, especially as we look to things like fractional leadership. So those who don't know what that is, it's an ability for someone to come in, say you're a startup in the like upwards of max like 5 mil. You don't have a CFO, a CRO, a CMO, or a sales leader. You can hire an amazing leader to come in and create a sales structure for you, a financial structure, and it can be on a contractual basis. So what this does is it allows you not having to put someone on full staff. They can come in on a contract basis. And for this individual, they can also then have the freedom of doing multiple fractional leadership roles, right? So say you're a newer mom, or you want to travel the world, or we want to have freedom in your own career, you can then be accessible as a fractional leader for these contracts. So again, really working on creating a space for that as well and making it more accessible. And also things like, freelancers, right? So say you're a videographer, photographer, what are ways in which you can be more accessible to those that might need you for your services? So more coming there as well. But I think the main premise for that is just realizing there is a community for it. there's a movement for it, and then just piecing it together. And I'm also a big believer in the and, not the or. So there's amazing organizations like Monday Girl out there and Women's Equity Lab. Like, we're not trying to compete, we're trying to work with, you know. I think what we're trying to see is wherever there are gaps, to fill those gaps and bring everyone together. So you'll hear that a lot, the and versus the or, because there's no need for us combating against each other. There's enough for everyone. And especially as we see a lot of investment moving out of the US into countries like, you know, like the UK, like Canada, you're going to see more and more influx of women wanting to invest in other women.
You have not done a lot in 8 months at all.
I'm a little passionate about this.
Well, thank you for all of that incredible work that you're doing on our behalf, Sydney. We're talking about this off mic, and that's why I had to hit record, right? Because one of the things that we all know to be true is that women have the hardest time investing in their damn selves, especially when it comes to their personal development, right? And so what I want to do with you is rewind the game tape. I want to hear about where you first got to experience some of that developmental opportunity. Did it take you getting all the way to that leadership seat, or did you have an opportunity to invest in yourself when maybe you identified that those were your aspirations?
Well, I will say, I have to give kudos to the OG Twitter community. I mean, they did invest in us from early stages. So I felt very lucky that prior to being a people leader at Twitter, companies do invest in their individuals. So I don't want to say it has to be outside of corporate. I feel very grateful. I had a few programs at Twitter. They created something called We Lead, which is with Harvard Business School and some of other MBA type academia. And it really helped us structure, even as ICs, just how to become a leader. So they were only for women leaders at the time, but really helped us curate those skills along the way. And then we had these cohorts that we could then work with outside of the actual curriculum. They also created a program called the Twitter Business Academy. So they would bring in 1 to 2 people from each country from Twitter across the world. And we got flown down to Wharton Business School, and we had an MBA simulation week, which was amazing. So we got to work with some of the top professors at Wharton. We worked on, I think, customer centricity, which was my focus of my pod. And it taught us some amazing skills, which then led to, and then also they had flown down all the top leaders of Twitter from across the globe so we could hear from them. So these are some of the kinds of programs that some great organizations will do, which is great. When I became a leader, I was a people leader. I was invested in through Coach Hub. So we had a Coach Hub program. So I got a dedicated executive coach to work with. And then we also had, you know, Susanna Baldwin. I'm not sure if she's crossed your paths in any way, but she was an executive coach and communication lead. So teaching us how to present well. So you can imagine a big part of being in sales is, you know, getting up there on stage and being authentic and communicating your space. So we got truly invested in, which is fantastic. After I left the corporate space, as mentioned, it's a bit scary out there and we're bootstrapping it. You know, we're not getting those, you know, wonderful support from corporate dollars. And so really, it's been interesting. I actually hired a phenomenal LinkedIn coach. Her name is Amy Wiedner. She's launched the Bold agency. She's now working with some large organizations. And she really has been wonderful for me personally because she's taught me how to have a voice. So we talk a lot about imposter syndrome and like, dude, what do I have to say? Like, I don't have an important, like, you know, important things to say. And she teaches you like how you get back to the root of you. So if I look at a pinwheel, right, it's like there's Sydney in the middle, Sid in the middle here. And there's all the things that are important to me. So whether it's community, travel, curiosity, you know, identity. And from there, there's so many things we can share. And I think, you know, what you talk about in your podcast is like being relatable, right? So it's like when you are talking to your community in a very authentic way, you're going to get the best feedback. People are going to relate to you. They're going to feel like they can connect.
Well,
so
I've got to give kudos. No, sorry to interrupt. I just want to give kudos on Twitter and X because there's, you know, we talk about this a lot from a corporate perspective. There's, you know, and especially I have to just call it out in the media space where they don't necessarily invest in executive coaching and see the benefit of the growth of their leader as a self-leader first before they can lead a team, right? So kudos to them on that. That's absolutely amazing. But I want to know what the aha moment was for you, where it
Mm.
was, when you said you kind of like decided this is what I need to do. Was there some sort of like pivotal moment in your career where you were like, it's time. It's time for me to go try this on my own. Like, where did that intrinsic drive come
Right.
from and that
Mhm.
catapult to move forward?
Right. Well, I think for me, as mentioned, there's a huge shift once we had the acquisition at X, and we lost 80% of our employees. So it was a drastic change. And I think what I started to see over the next year plus, where I was leading the team under a new identity, was just I got to a point where I felt like I just wasn't aligning as much to my core values. And I think what's most important across the board, to be completely frank, is like you have to feel aligned, whether it's your own business or in a corporate environment. If things don't align to your core values anymore, you have to stand up for yourself, really, right? Because
Mhm.
I just felt like I was like losing a sense of identity. And I'm like, who am I now? And again, not to diss anyone out there, like, listen, I still have some friends that work at X. Like, I truly believe like chart your own path. But for me personally, I spent my entire career building up my relationships, right? Like I'm all authenticity in my sales approach. Like when I build multi-million-dollar deals, it's because I build that trust with my client.
Mhm.
That's part of my personal brand as well, as Sydney Robertson, right? In the industry. So when I started to feel like that was misaligning with like I was trying to tell my clients to do something that I wasn't really feeling aligned to my core values, I'm like, it got the ick, right? Like it just didn't feel good anymore. And I'm like, what am I doing for myself? So that was really the impetus for me to be like, okay, like what I need to align to things that really make me feel proud about myself and my core being. And so, doing the work with Empower Her, feeling like I was making a difference there. I started talking to my co-founder, Jen. I'm like, I just feel like this is a mission for us. Like, I want to do something that I feel like when I think about legacy, what that means to me, right? Like, I lost both my parents at an earlier age. And like, I talk a lot about legacy and what that means. And it's not about like money in the bank. It's about like that footprint I leave behind. And I want to feel proud about what I'm doing. And so for me, it was like, I'm almost 50 as well. And I'm like, this is my time. Like, I'm not going to wait till I'm 70 to start like saving money for a fund. Like, I want to start making a difference now. And that can be through my, like my sweat equity, and then doing that myself. So I think that was really for me, like, I want to feel really proud about what I'm doing and do it now. And it was scary. Like, it was really scary because I've had that corporate comfort for so many years, right? And when that first like period happened where no check came in, it's like, ooh, okay, this is my own savings. This is me, right? I have to believe in me. And it was really hard, but honestly, Shelley, it was the best thing I ever did. Like it really was. And when I have those scary moments, and I'm very fortunate to have a super supportive partner. He's amazing. And he's like, I believe in you. And so that makes a huge difference as well. When in the household, you have someone that really supports your decision. He even said though at one point, he's like, I was a little scared, but I'm like, we're gonna be okay. But he believed in me, and that makes a difference. And when I have those days where you have the entrepreneurial wobble, you're like, okay, like root back to why you do something, right? And it's your core values and it's what, and matters to you the most. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I physically felt a shift in myself. Like when I made that choice, I literally, like my whole demeanor changed. It was wild. Like I was like not sleeping. It was like the corporate life was stressing me out. It was like impacting my perimenopause. Like I was like hot flashes through the roof. Like it was like not okay. I'm not kidding you. Like a month after making this change for myself, like my body just
Let go.
regulated. And
Mm.
it's like, okay, you're safe. You're safe.
You're not holding anymore.
I
Yeah.
You're not
love that.
holding.
Yeah. How do I empower them and inspire them when we don't know what's happening tomorrow? We don't know what's going to happen, like, with a change in our product or announcement. Like, Elon's a very public facing individual. So we didn't know what he was going to say on stage somewhere and how that could impact our business the next day. Like, we were kind of running our own PR, talks of positivity, because you don't want to tell people like, guys, everything's fine, because it wasn't. Like things were very volatile, right?
So
yeah.
while we're talking about this, you coming out of that whole Twitter X experience, at the beginning when we first started the podcast, you mentioned that you felt like you learned a lot from that time.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of curious if you could tell us, like, if there's any key insights that you brought out of that time that you're finding helpful or useful for you in terms of what you're doing now.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a lot of that kind of reverse startup culture that happened there because, I mean, think of Elon Musk as you will. Like there's definitely differing opinions. I mean, but he is a genius in his own right in some respects.
Mhm.
We have very different values in terms of our corporate, like how we lead people, but in terms of like how he's launched companies, like it was very eye-opening. I mean, literally, because they scraped down to a bare minimum, I was dealing directly with like the head of engineering. So if we had a bug, we were literally behind the scenes, like fixing things, right? Until we started to rebuild the teams again. So, I mean, I learned to pivot quickly. Like it was very much like startup, right? Where you're literally like, okay, this backfired, pivot quickly. You have to be able to be nimble and quick. So I'd say number one is learning to be very agile in times of significant change. Also learning how to people manage in a time of crisis. So, you know, my team, like I had to very like lean in deep on like, okay, how do I empower them and inspire them when we don't know what's happening tomorrow? We don't know what's going to happen, like, you know, with a change in our product or announcement. Like, you know, Elon's a very public facing individual. So we didn't know what he was going to say on stage somewhere and how that could impact our business the next day. Like we were kind of running our own PR. So like, okay, let's check that. Let's check this. Let's check what happened on the news and are we okay today? You know? And that's, you know, it is what it is. But like we were all like having to pivot so quickly in terms of our comms. And so I think as a people leader, which is number two, was, you know, figuring out how I could not be like, not that toxic positivity, because you don't want to tell people like, guys, everything's fine. Because it wasn't. Like things were very volatile, right? So like if I was doing that, it would not be authentic. But learning to look at the positives in the situation. So that was a big learning as well, is, you know, not to be, because I've done some Gallup training, I've done training programs, and one of my blind spots is I can tend to be a little bit overly positive, which can come across as inauthentic, right? If you're saying like everything's great, what are you talking about? Well, no, there's fires going off over here. Like that's not authentic, right? So really leaning into, okay, I can't be that overly positive person here, but how can I root into areas where we can work on our strengths? And so that really helped me as a leader as well. Just really lean in times where I had to be really honest sometimes and be like, you know, guys, this is really scary, or, you know, I don't know what's going to happen here, but here's where areas where I think we can work together and work and grow. So those are the main two ones.
Amazing.
And I think thirdly, just, you know, working with different teams in a very impactful way. Like I've never been that close to, like in a corporate environment, the people that are building the product, and like the new appreciation I had for product managers and engineers. Like,
Boy,
you know, like before it was like you'd have a sales bug, you'd like file a ticket and would go off to the abyss somewhere and someone would always fix it, but you don't know who it was. You're literally talking with people that were building the product. So I think just new appreciation of different roles. Like we had an engineer team sitting right beside us. Like they were part of us, you know? So it was very interesting just to, you know, learn that. And I think these are all skills that, you know, as I'm now launching two companies, like just honing in on people's skills too, right? So not everyone has to be the expert at everything, right? So for example, like in Bond to Bloom, like, you know, my co-founder, Danielle, she's phenomenal. She has another company called Curate and Gather, which is like, you know, she just creates beautiful spaces. I'm not going to pretend to be able to do what Danielle does. And Amy, my other co-founder, she's an executive coach and she's phenomenal what she does. That's different skills than me, right? So I think seeing skills in other people as well, that I learned from my period at X, has helped me as well in these environments where I'm like, I can just focus in on the things that I'm really good at and how they complement my other teammates. And through that, we can grow together and be our best entity together, you know?
I feel like you just highlighted our superpower as females, right? Which is our collaborative spirit. You can feel it in this locker room today. But yeah, and since you're working to empower all of these women, what would you say to all the women out there listening who maybe have aspirations to be a leader, but have been told their whole lives that, oh, you know, women can't be leaders because they're too sensitive, or women can't be leaders because they're not hard enough, right? Or holding people accountable enough. All the things that we are indoctrinated with from a conditioning standpoint. I know you mentioned imposter syndrome, so I know you probably had to battle through some of those limited beliefs yourself. But what would your advice be to those women that are listening right now in terms of where they can really start to focus on, yeah, what we females have in spades intrinsically, right? I mentioned our collaborative spirit, but all these years in your ascension, I feel like you've probably really got a finger on the pulse in terms of what makes us excellent potential leaders as females. What would you say to those women listening?
Well, I mean, there's two sides of it. So one is, you know, I do feel like we are very meticulous to detail. So, I mean, one of my amazing leaders at Twitter, Melissa Barnes. Like I called her Melissa Barnes School of Business. She terrified me in a lot of ways,
Love
but
that.
I was like the most inspired. And when I got hired as a people leader, she was the leader, my boss's boss, basically. And I remember I had to do this presentation and it had to be 6 slides. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I think, you know, she as a woman leader was up there at the top of Twitter. Like she just wowed the crowd. And honestly, a lot of the leaders at Twitter were women. So I was able to see firsthand, like, oh, this is how you do it. You know, very lucky, you know, very lucky. I think what we can, again, it's the and versus the or. So I think like, we can have the business rigor. We can have that detail, but also leaning into our divine feminine. Sorry to get a bit woo here, but like we have those skills. Like we are natural leaders. We're moms. We freaking run the troops. Like that we naturally lean as people leaders. And we are great listeners and we're great executors. You know, I think we're able to see more. So I mean, like, I feel like, you know, even like now, like people are like, oh my God, you've launched 2 companies and you're doing this. I'm like, but that's how our brains work. We can multitask. We can.
That's right.
And I mean, we can do more. And I think, you know, where we don't have to compete against men because we offer different things, but we can still have those phenomenal skills, right? We have those core rigors. We know our numbers. We know like Shelley's a sales leader too. Like, we know how to close those big deals, but we lean into our divine feminine. We lean into that side of us where we are leaders in terms of connecting with people, connecting with clients, you know, being great listeners and executing plans, you know?
I think
I
it's
Also
love
the patience
All
as
about
well.
you're like,
we're all ready to jump in. Well, I love what you're saying about the divine feminine, and you're talking about different skills that we have as women. And, you know, I think women are connected to their intuition, and very much so. And I'm just curious, like with you and, you know, starting 8 months ago, your endeavors, like did intuition pay any, was that connected at all to just the sense of this is the time?
So not to get too woo here, because I'm not sure it's not, but
you can get as woo as you want.
Okay, well, we'll just go there. So
woo it up.
Like resigned from X on like a Thursday or Friday. My last day I had to do like, I had to present her like second half business like review. There you go. Computer off. There we go. That was a very weird last day. Then literally the next day, got on a plane and went to California, and I did a retreat with a shaman. Very different, very, very different. Like it was like a cleansing experience in many ways. And it really helped me. I ended up working with her. We just had our last session actually on Monday. So it's been quite a journey. But honestly, a big part of it was, you know, you said being back in the body. I was out of my body. Like I wasn't even connected at all. At the end, I was like, I was reacting. I'm like, boo, 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 boo. Like everything was just coming at me. And I'm like, okay, we'll do this, do that, not even in my own body anymore. And so back to the question of intuition, I mean, she taught me how to get back there. Like we did a test on my my nervous system. So the average nervous system, if you are healthy for regulation, you can regulate in 90 seconds. I was taking 8 minutes. Like I couldn't, she's like, girl, you are not okay. So we worked for months just on breath work and just like, I have dogs, like taking hikes with the dog and being present and then trusting myself and trusting my intuition. Because I think when you're in such a reactive state, sometimes you're not even like listening to yourself anymore and trusting your own self. Cause you're like, well, I gotta do this, gotta do that. Well, like, I've got this person I've got to get back to. I've got to, you know, X, Y, and Z. But when you actually are able to root back to yourself, be in your body, do the work, trust yourself and trust your intuition. So it's 100% like when I have those moments where I'd have panics, I just like take a minute, right? And be like, okay, like there's a reason why you're doing this. Like there's a reason why your body is now regulated. It's because you're trusting yourself, right? And you're making the right choices. And I know it's hard because we get so caught up in it, but I'll tell you, like a big part of what we're doing with our Bond to Bloom, I have a lifestyle wellness specialist and she's phenomenal. And I met her because I met her AOL actually, because she would come in and she would teach yoga and meditation at the office. And then there's this phase, and Shelley, you probably know this too, where the drink hurts was a big thing, like back in the day for the agencies. And we were at some summit of some sort, and we were brainstorming ideas for, you know, wellness in the workplace. And so one of the leaders at PhD said, well, what if we did something different and changed up the drink cards? And I'm like, well, what if instead of the money I put towards your drink cards, I bring in someone and teach I won't teach them, but like someone will
Yeah.
teach yoga. And then they're like, okay. So we literally started a program PhD where weekly, instead of drink carts, this amazing woman would come in and she would teach yoga and bring in smoothies and drinks. And it became, so when I left AOL to go to Twitter, they kept it up. They were like, we want this, we want Charlotte to come in and she's amazing. So she then became, we brought her into Twitter and she would do like these meditation classes and it just would center you back again. So a lot of what we are teaching women to do is to take those 5 minutes. Like one tip is literally like if you're sitting at your desk, whatever, you're all riled up, is you literally put your hand on your heart and you breathe into your heart and just take a minute. Like it's all you need to do. Like breath work is like so undervalued. Like it literally connects you back to yourself.
I can see
Amen.
Eden just like
You're
buzzing right now.
preaching to the choir over
I
here.
am just ready
Yeah.
to dig in, but I've already asked too many questions, so I'll
No,
sit
no,
back
no,
for a
go,
few
go,
minutes.
go.
No, you go, Susan.
We're in the flow. I just want to know for all of the leaders out there listening, we have such a hard time sometimes making a case for these human-centric strategies that you're listing out. I know you're calling it woo-woo. It's actually neuroscience, folks, in terms of the science behind peak state and flow. And that obviously is where we're going to access max potential in our leadership game, right? So what would you say to all those old school leaders that are listening right now that say they don't have time for this type of woo-woo human-centric development in their businesses? We got AI coming, right? We got the Gen Zs coming up the backside. There's so much uncertainty with all this Trump stuff. What would you say to those leaders, obviously, who are stuck in scarcity in their nervous system? But in terms of how important and crucial and differentiating a factor this can be in terms of your development of your people.
Oh, 100% it is because, I mean, first of all, everyone has 5 minutes in their day. I'm sorry. Like, you take 5 minutes for a bathroom break, take 5 minutes for yourself just to like regulate, just for yourself as a leader. And I think a big part of it too, and Jack Dorsey, when he was our our leader, he was like shamany, like he no speaking for 10 days in a desert. Like that was his vibe. But we did instill it into our culture. And I will say, like, great example of a wonderful leadership team at that time during the pandemic when we were all just like losing our shit. Pardon, like it was like we were not okay.
You remember.
We were all there, and we started doing something where we would then every meeting, we would always end it 5 minutes early, and then the next one would start on the 5. So you always had a minute for yourself in between just to gather yourself.
Amazing.
And we weren't physically going to a meeting room. You're physically just like Zoom to Zoom or Google Hangout to Google Hangout. But doing that, and then we also had periods of like 1 hour a day, which is for you, so no one could book you in for that time. So it was just it could be a half hour, but it's just like, and it's also not for like you are off your Slack then, like everyone knows it's like in the calendar, so like across the board, it was like a rest stage, and it was basically time for you to go for a little walk or whatever else it was, and everyone can do that because you're actually going to be more productive.
That's
If
it, right there.
You're burning out. You're not going to be productive. You go into a spiral, right? Like you need that time to reconnect to yourself, take a minute, walk around, just get the blood flowing again. So I'd say for any of those leaders, I mean, you're going to get more productive workers if you invest in them as well. And that was the biggest thing, is that I felt like that I was being invested in. Like
that's
you're
massive
gonna have
too.
less
Speaking
attrition,
of values, right?
Yeah.
It shows that you care about your people. When you care about your people, they'll care about you and your business results.
100%.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you speed up by slowing down.
Absolutely.
Most high achievers are in such scarcity they can't trust that slowing down part. But that's why you went to a shaman in California right off the heels of your ex experience, right? Is because
I was lucky, and
burnt out and needed recovery. But that's the thing I think that we want our leaders to hear, right? Is like the cost if you don't.
Well, that's it. I mean, my story is extreme, and I am aware of that. So it's not like everyone can go to California desert and have a time between roles and all that. But to your point earlier, it doesn't have to be like this crazy thing. It's just like implementing in, and again, like executive coaching, like I felt so like invested in, like I had my own. Oh my gosh, Fern was amazing. My coach hub coach, and like I would meet with her, and I actually got they kept it going like after the ex transition happened. So like when I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing here? I'm not leading Canada, and I don't know. I was like just a people leader 2 rows down before this 24 hours ago, and having her and that consistency of, like I said earlier, like a executive coach is like a therapist. Like it is truly, you have to have the right match, and you have to be invested in or invest in yourself because it's so crucial. And it's again, like when I had the company paying for me doing that, I just felt so valued. And to be honest, like I would probably still be there if we had that structure still in place. And for many reasons, because I was developing, I really felt like I was learning so much, So
Number
it makes
two
a difference.
value on Gallup. You mentioned Gallup. So
Yes.
I think our leaders in scarcity need to hear that too, in terms of
Oh,
these
yeah.
generations that are coming up behind us,
Yeah.
right? Is
And
like
also
that
to
they're
do it
looking
with your
for.
team, like doing it, sorry to interrupt you, but like doing it with your team as well. So Gallup for us was great because it was everyone, right? And we all had to, like, I learned I was like a futurist, and I learned all my wins, and then I also learned my blind spots. So when I'm talking to my manager, I know what hers are as well, and we could connect on those and understand. And so she would learn more about her team and how to work with us, and vice versa. I knew how to work with her better,
I
And
gotta chime in here on
yeah,
Gallup. I've got to make a comment on that because
yeah.
as much as I love Gallup and I love the
Mm.
exercise of it, I think some of the biggest downfall with a lot of corporations is they'll
Mm.
put programs into place, but then it's like, okay, so I figured all
Now
this
what?
about my team, and then they do nothing about it.
I hear
Okay,
you.
so I've got this team that's got all of this gap. I've got this team that's got this gap, and then it's like, thanks for coming out, everyone.
Well, that's where you
Right?
guys
And it's
step
like,
in. That's where
now
you
what
step
do you
in.
do about it?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah.
We just they fall short in terms of the integration part.
Follow through in the execution.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. No, I hear you. I mean, it's great learnings, but then
Mhm.
exactly, it's the now what, right?
Yeah.
And
Now
how you
what?
implement that into your day to day.
And something else I want to touch on before what you were saying when you left Twitter, and then it was that going to the shaman and realized that what was it, 8 minutes it took
Oh my
you to
gosh.
regulate.
Yeah.
I think the problem that we face, especially in corporate and females in corporate specifically, is you're just completely unaware of where you're at in terms of your burnout stage because the life that you live is your norm, right? If your norm is, and that's just the nature of the beast of the business, people are getting up at, god hours of the morning because optically it feels like you should. So I think that we create these preconditioned rules for ourselves. I got to be honest, I think it's for ourselves. It's not necessarily the corporation beating you over the head. It's us in terms of how we want to show up, that we're doing all the things that you do, and you don't realize it until you get to a point where you're crashing and burning at
Yeah.
a really,
It's a
really
way of being. I mean, I don't know, Susan, if you remember coaching me, where I was like, this was a long time ago, when like 10 years ago or more, when my kids are really young, and that, you're trying to get the kids off to school and work and all this sort of stuff. And I would be so thirsty, but I remember coming in and complaining to Susan, like, I don't even have time to have a glass of water. And she's like, why wouldn't you just stop for a second?
Or
I
make
do
banana
remember
bread.
that.
Or
Or like
make
human
banana bread.
necessity.
I actually couldn't do it for a long time. I couldn't do it because I just was in this robot mode. Oh, well, who cares? I don't need it now. I'll have water later. It's just like you have to, we don't value, right? I think it's like what you were saying earlier is that, Sydney, is that when you, and Susan, you hit on it too, is like, yeah, you're going to be more productive when you start doing these things and you realize, oh, I actually feel a lot better on the, then that kind of gets you on board. But until you've experienced the benefits, it is really hard to get off this track that Shelley's talking about. And I know, Shelley, you've told me you were in that track for a long time.
It's just, it's a hamster wheel that you can't get off because you don't even know you're on it.
Exactly. You're not aware, right? Like the whole like sense of self, right? Like you're just so removed from your, and that's when like you can't, your intuition's not kicking in. All the things that are like part of our core, you can't connect with because you're that robot, like you said, Liane, right? Like you're not even getting a glass of water, which is like bare human necessity. Dehydrated,
A bit of an extreme,
First
although there is a
lesson-
story about her making banana bread as well.
Yeah. First lesson.
Way.
First lesson was on needs unmet, right, Liane?
Oh yeah. That
I
was
feel like when we're
life-changing.
when we're running on these deficits and we're in scarcity as much as we are, coming from an imposter syndrome, which is kind of where we started this conversation, when we don't see ourselves, we give all our awareness away to the world because that is safety. We need to make sure that we are proving ourselves at every single turn and twist of the journey, right? And so when you're leading yourself in that deficit scarce way, you're leading from fear and stress, not intuition and trust. And so that's why it's so important to listen to everything that's buried into this interview. I feel like we've covered so many bases in regards to how important it is for not only females, but leaders, period, point blank, to step into self-leadership so they can get to the helm in their nervous system. Your nervous system is the thing that drives your potential in terms of your performance and impact. Sydney, if you could leave our leaders with any final piece of advice here in 2025, as we're still trying to learn to trust some of these new school human-centric ways, what would that be?
Well, just to invest in yourself and invest in your people, right? At the end of the day, we're all humans. And in times like this in the world where things are so up in the air and unknown, it's like all we can do is really protect ourselves and protect our teams. So investing in yourself, investing in your teams will be the best thing you can do because you'll get the best outcomes. It all leads to better outcomes.
Sister. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I love that.
Agree with you.
Amen, sister, preach. And Sydney, if anybody is curious to find you, which I know they certainly will be following this interview, where would you like them to reach out?
Well, I have like 3 websites. So I think the easiest probably is just on LinkedIn, to be honest, to start, and we'll go from there. So it's just Sydney Robertson, and you'll find me as the co-founder and CEO of Element, and would love to get your feedback. And like I said, I'm still in the founder, like early stages. So I'm always open to hearing feedback and ideas as we grow our companies. So
awesome. Well, we'll make sure to have all 3 of your websites in the show notes too. Just in case anybody's
the 3 of us need to go to one of her events as well.
I can't wait till there's a 4th and a 5th. I have a feeling there's going to be like multiple websites along the way if that's what you've accomplished in 8 months.
Well, appreciate that. But thank you so much for the opportunity for chatting with you all today. And what you're doing is amazing, honestly. Like everyone needs an executive coach and needs to be empowered and to believe in themselves and to invest in themselves. So important.
So much mindset buried in this interview, which is why I love it so much. Ladies, do you have any final words for our audience today?
Well, yeah, I think you're so right. There is a lot of mindset stuff embedded in this interview. So I'd say, go back and hit rewind on a couple of those riffs and just make sure that sinks in.
For me, it's a key takeaway from this one today, which is something that took me a bit more than a bit, as you know, Susan, is to breathe, to your point, Sydney, and because you're just not even aware of how much you're actually not breathing.
It's crazy.
Awareness will change the game, folks. I know it seems like kind of an obvious tip or tactic in the leadership arena. It absolutely is not. Like I said a second ago, we're constantly giving our power away to the world to get our needs met by the world. If we have not yet had this opportunity to double down on our growth game, invest in our damn selves, and get to the helm in our self-leadership. The thing I love the most about this interview, though, is that we've really highlighted it doesn't need to be a competition, whether that's between women trying to ascend to the top of the game, right? Or it's with our male counterparts. I think we can all see this world has never needed us to collaborate more than it does today. So I love the in it to win it together spirit in this freaking locker room today, ladies. Thank you so much. And for our audience, thank you for being the inspiration for these types of conversations. We're in a year of co-collaboration and co-creation ourselves, Sydney. That co-creation is our anchor word here at the Leadership Launchpad Project. So everyone out there listening, feeling the inspo through their airwaves right now, I really want to hear from you. I want to know if we're hitting the mark in terms of the topics that we're covering when we bring these freaking world-changing experts, game-changing experts in leadership. I want to know if there's anything else that we're not talking about that you want us to be talking about. Please, please, please send me personally an email. I want to hear from you, susan@elitehighperformance.com. And for all other new school, human-centric, basically everything we talked about here in the locker room today, leadership development and training, you can find all of that over at our website, elitehighperformance.com. That's it. That's all, ladies. This has been an absolute blast. I'm so fired up for the rest of my day. Hopefully our folks listening are too. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Everyone.